First thing we're going to dive into is plumbing related floods, and mainly how to prevent them in the first place. So let's take a look at this first slide where you will see my prevention tip number 1, which is to understand where the water main is in your home. It is a copper pipe that will come through your home from the outside. It's most often in a basement. If you don't have a basement, it could be in a utility closet, it could be in a storage room, possibly a garage, but most often it is in a basement. So you will see a copper pipe that comes through your home, and attached to the copper pipe is a valve. That is the water main valve. That one valve or handle will shut down water flow to your entire house, so that if there is an emergency that has created a massive leak in your home, you can run here, you can turn off the water to the whole house, and then assess, regroup, and begin repair to the problem. It is imperative that every adult living in that house knows where this valve is and how to turn it. You see in the photo where the red arrow is that there is a long handle-like paddle valve. That is called it's called a paddle valve, and when it is parallel to the pipe, it is on. If it is turned perpendicular to the pipe, that means the water is not flowing. So it's important that everybody in the house, including teenagers, preteens, anyone left alone, even for an hour after school, should know where the water main is and know how to turn the water off. Sometimes in lieu of a paddle valve or paddle handle, you may have a round knob, and same idea, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey to shut the water off. So that's very important. The next thing is to understand that there are times when you go to turn that valve and it won't turn because it hasn't been shut off in 15 years maybe, and there is corrosion of rust, lime, calcium, mineral deposits, and it just won't budge. So what you have to do is get CLR, calcium, lime, and rust remover. And you can brush that on a toothbrush around the valve connections, and then it can open up very easily and you can turn your water off. Now this is something I suggest that people do once a year. Once a year you turn the water off and right back on to make sure that the valve is functioning well, that it is not rusted shut, that you can't turn it, and that there's no leaks, because often we don't go down and even look in that part of our basement or storage area. So make sure that you check your valve once a year, turn it off, turn it back on, just for good measure. If there is a leak at the water main, that is something you would call a plumber for, because he will shut the water off at the curb outside your house and then replace that valve inside. That's the only way to handle a valve replacement. And it is definitely worth replacing because you want to make sure that the water can be turned off to your home. Trust me, this is imperative. If you can't turn that water off, you end up calling the fire department. The fire department will be sent out with a special tool to turn the water off the curb for you, and they charge you. So you really don't want to have that, plus the amount of water that will be lost and spilled over in the time that it takes them to come. Every adult who owns a home needs to know where the water main is. Now, let's talk about checking for any minor leaks underneath your sinks and in the access panel behind your tubs and showers. This is really important. You want to make sure that you check back there periodically and make sure there are no minor leaks. Because remember that a minor leak can become a major leak if left undetected. Now, if you have appliances installed in your house, it's really a great idea to install collection trays under them. The top photo is a photo from my house where last year we installed new hardwood floors throughout our house. Adding hardwood floors is a beautiful thing to a home, and I love them, but it does require some extra TLC because hardwood floors are more susceptible to damage from water than other types of flooring. So we installed a appliance pan underneath the dishwasher. Didn't even know that they existed until about 2 years ago, but I'm so grateful that I found this. This was about $25 on Amazon, and it is three-sided, and the front edge has no lip, so that if water collects from a leak underneath your dishwasher, it spills out towards the front and will leak out under the kick plate of your dishwasher, so you are aware that there is a leak happening. So that's a really great product to add to a new appliance. Now, the bottom photo is a water collection pan under a hot water heater. If you are having a new water heater installed, please make sure that your contractor offers you a pan. It's a great thing to have. It will not stop that entire 75-gallon hot water heater from spilling water on the floor, but it will collect small amounts of water that identify the fact that maybe the bottom is rusting out, or you have a potential break in the cavity of the tank and an impending disaster is coming. So it's great to put that pan under. Again, it's like $25 or $30 in the scheme of doing that project. Add one of those. It can only be installed at the time of installation, because once the tank is set into place, it's a whole new install to add the pan. So make sure you do it at the original install. Now, I want to show you in that bottom corner water alarms. The photo I have there is a water alarm by GE. That alarm is less than $20. You can buy them on Amazon as well as at some of the local home centers. And the hexagonal section has the actual alarm. It is a sticky back adhesive on the back of that, and then it has a little electrode tethered to it. The electrode also has a sticky back adhesive. So the idea is that the alarm is attached to the side of, say, the hot water heater, and you place it so that the alarm electrodes just touch the floor, just maybe a 1/16 of an inch off the floor, so that if water collects, the electrode sense the water and the alarm sounds. These things are fantastic. I've had them go off once in my house. I was very grateful. I had a leak behind my refrigerator at the water for the ice maker. So I was very grateful for the alarm back there. I had another student who also had applied one of these to her hot water heater 2 weeks after taking my class, and was so grateful because they heard the alarm sound and it prevented a massive flood in her basement. So the water alarms, like I said, are available at home centers. This is one style. There's another style that looks like a transistor radio, and I have also helped clients install those with just by setting it in position underneath the faucet and drain setup in the access panel of a tub. So the homeowner was very anxious about having that happen again because she had had major problems from the first tub leak. So we installed one of these. They're battery operated, so they do have to have batteries checked every few months. Basically every 6 months you want to check the battery, and then they should last for years. It's just checking those batteries because they are not wired to any system in your house, so you do have to check batteries. Again, these are under $20 devices, fantastic ways to alert you if you do have any leaking, because a small leak can lead to a big one. Now, a few other tips. Don't ignore those minor leaks, of course. Teach every housemate, everyone in your home who could be left alone should know how to shut the water off. ID those potential leak areas under the sinks, access panels behind toilets or behind tubs and showers. The toilet can be a source of leaks. The water main itself, the refrigerant line, and of course the washing machine, the dishwasher, water softeners, those big appliances. And have your appliances serviced on schedule. Many appliances don't necessarily need a scheduled service, but if you identify any little issues going on with them, have them serviced or do your own diagnostics, Google, YouTube, and find out what could be going on so you don't have a larger issue on your hand. Now, moving forward, we're going to dive into basement blues. The top photo is a friend's house after a massive basement flood. We want to prevent those things. So what I want you to take note on the bottom of our slide is the French drain. The French drain is not in every basement, but most basements do have that. It is a gap between the slab floor and the wall. It's about 2 inches wide, and the idea is that any water that comes up from the water table in the soil underneath your home would gravitate to that crack, to that little ridge, and the whole floor of your basement is pitched so that all the water would then move or pitch itself to the lowest point where the sump pump is. It's important that you see that the French drain is not blocked, that there's not debris in it. You can notice in this photo there is a big chunk of something in the middle of the photo. You want to keep the French drain clear. Now, another thing to prevent basement flooding issues is exterior drainage. The middle photo shows ice collecting at the bottom of the gutter. This was my house several years ago in a bad storm with a lot of snow and ice, and the water was collecting right there. It was not pitching away from the foundation. The problem is that the water can then backflow into the foundation, down the walls of the foundation, and you are more susceptible to flooding. So you want to get out in storms and see, is water collecting along the foundation of your house? Do you see water in the mulch? Do you see pooling? Or do you see that the gutters are really moving the water away from the house as it's supposed to? There is an extension tube that you can get for your gutters. It can be a little cumbersome in the yard and not so pretty that you want to leave it out all the time, but it's an accordion style tube. It will expand and contract. They run from just a few feet to, I think, upwards of 15 feet in length that you can attach to your downspout and move the water away. When would you do that? When we know that we are getting a tropical storm, hurricane type winds, a blizzard with a thaw right after with heavy rains. Those moments that the weather is predicted to have a lot of heavy rain and water, you can add this extension hose, move the water away from the foundation. Just be mindful and considerate that you don't direct the water that's into a neighbor's yard to create a problem for them in their home instead. Now, the bottom photo is that of the sump pump. The sump pump is something that many homes have, not all, but many homes have, and it's important that you make sure that the cover stays intact, that no debris gets thrown into the sump pump so that it can continue to work. It's a great idea to have a battery backup on your sump pump. Not everyone has one. I know I do not have a battery backup. We've not had a problem with our sump pump. It functions well, and I do check it, and I'm aware of how often it runs because I can see the water outlet out in my yard. And my golden retriever is also fully aware of where the water outlet is and comes in full of mud. But few maintenance things on your sump pump. Again, keep it covered. Make sure no debris gets into it. If there is a power failure, you need to be prepared that you could have to bail the water out of it, literally with a bucket, or you could use a siphon hose. Now, if you have had a radon positive test in your home and you have a sealed sump pump system, you wouldn't be able to open it easily to bail any water out of it. So keep in mind that when there is a power failure, what is your plan for your sump pump? Are you able to run an extension cord from the sump pump? The cord's coming up right out of the pump. You can see it at the very back edge of the photo, the black power cord. Can you run an extension cord out to the generator and just clear the water, drop it down? The sump pump will last a very long time. Ours is 22 years and it's going strong. But keep in mind, it's something you want to check and just make sure that in a storm, is the water level rising? Is it stopped functioning? Did a power fail to it? Did it surge out? Do you have to check the circuit breaker? All of those things. So those are ways you can prevent problems in your basement with potential floods, because it can be very expensive, especially if you have a finished basement. Now, let's talk about simple safety shutoffs. These three photos are very important. You really want to understand where these are in your home and identify them. So, first photo is that of the electrical circuit breaker box. In that box, at the spot where the red arrow is pointing, you will see the main breaker. There is one main breaker that shuts off all power to your house, as well as individual breakers that are in separate locations that allow you to distribute power in different spaces. Now, everybody in the house should know where the circuit breaker box is. If you need to shut power off, if there is some reason where you need to shut power off to the whole house, it's good to know exactly where that breaker is. In the center photo, you can see this is the gas line coming into the house. Again, not every home has gas, but if your home has gas, it's good to know where the gas lines are and know where the valves are. You will see with the white arrow that there is a little red handle, and that is the gas valve. If the valve is parallel in line with the hose, it is open. If it is perpendicular, that means that it is off. Now, at the top of your basement steps, you should also see a red labeled switch. And you see in this photo, it says emergency shut off for gas furnace or gas burner. So that is the emergency shut off for your furnace. And that is not required by law in every region, but in some areas it is. So you will see that you have that special emergency switch in place. For this next section, let's talk about high wind alert. This is really an important thing to consider, because in certain regions, especially in the East Coast where I'm at, we often know that we're going to have bad wind conditions. If you live in the central US and you have tornadoes and things, you don't have much time to plan. But in other areas, we know we're going to have storms, and we're able to prepare our properties to avoid disasters. So I want you to focus in on a few of these objects that are what I call potential projectiles. Now, the flagpole. It's great to have a flagpole, whether it's a pretty one or it's a patriotic flagpole. Those can easily be ripped off the house, and now you have a 4-foot long wooden stick flying towards your windows. So in heavy wind alerts, please take your flagpole down. The basketball net can be a major hazard in high wind, because you do not want that basketball net to, one, break itself, because you don't want to have to replace the backboard, but more importantly, you don't want it to fall on your vehicle. So keep that in mind. You want to either add more sand bags or maybe blocks, cement blocks to the base, or simply get a buddy or two and lay it on its side so it will not be a fall hazard. Lawn furniture. You'd be shocked how many times lawn furniture goes flying across a property. Again, you don't want it to scratch cars and break windows and damage anyone else's property in addition to your own. Tree maintenance. Do you have trees on your property that need some TLC? Walk around your property and take a look. Do you see a lot of small branches on the ground? That is indicative of maybe there's some unhealthy stuff going on inside the tree, and you need to have some maintenance done, where you can get up in there, thin it out so that the winds can move fully through without putting a drag on the trees. Certain types of trees, certain varieties and species are more susceptible to being ripped out of the ground very easily by heavy winds. So keep all of that in mind and do your tree maintenance. I know tree service can be very expensive, but it can also be a lot cheaper than co-pays and major restoration when a tree lands on the house. And lastly, I wanted to point out the gas grill. A lot of us have our gas grills in the yard, and we often forget in a storm that that can be a projectile. It is very easy, they're not that heavy, for wind to upend a gas grill. And what's on the inside of that cabinet but a propane tank? So I usually recommend, if a big storm is predicted, that homeowners either take some bricks or rocks or something and open the cabinet doors and weigh down the bottom shelf where that propane is, or move that grill so it's up against the wall so that it is secure and less likely to be tossed by the wind, because when it gets tossed, you can now have the propane tank that becomes disconnected and you have propane escaping, and that's just another hazard. If you do move your grill tight to the house in a storm, please make sure that you have moved it away from the house fully before you light it for your cooking. The broken window. The broken window is definitely a problem because you could have that projectile that has hit your house in the middle of a storm, and now what do you do? Because you don't want the rain to come in, you don't want the wind to come in, you don't want any other elements to help break that glass even wider. So in a real pinch, again, this is not a long-term solution, this is in the emergency, in the height of the storm, I'm going to deal with it again properly in a few days or within the week. If you have a broken window, you're going to find a piece of plexiglass in your house maybe. If you can't find plexiglass, take picture frame glass. Take a piece of glass that is bigger than the hole that you have, and make sure it's not that real thin, cheap glass, but a little bit thicker picture glass, and some medical tape. Now, I'm showing you a photo because I want you to realize it's not the papery tape, but it's the cloth tape that's a little thicker and heavier. Kind of has ridges on it. Medical tape is fairly waterproof and will hold up quite a bit to the elements, so it's really a nice option in an emergency. You could use cardboard, but I definitely prefer using a piece of glass. Could use plastic if you wanted, but you're going to cover up that hole across all four sides, and you're going to keep the wind and the rain out that way. I do not suggest using duct tape. It's so sticky, it can damage the surrounding glass or trim or anything. So I try to use that medical tape. It's just a nice thing to have around for a medical emergency or for a home emergency. Let's talk power failures. Power failures happen, and some people experience them more often than others. I know for my neighborhood, even though we have underground wiring, we tend to lose power a lot. We are near a transformer, and it is often affected by storms. So let's talk about some of the do's and don'ts for managing that power failure so that you can prevent larger problems in your house. The first is it me or is it PECO? PECO is our electric company in the Philly area. So you have to identify, is the problem at your house or is it the whole area, your neighborhood, your street, subdivision? So that's important. Call a neighbor, drive down the street, see who has power, who does not. I really think it's important that you have the phone number for your electrical provider in your cell phone. I have PECO's number in my phone. I've had it there for years. So if the power goes out, I can quickly report an outage. The faster you report the outage and the more people that report the outage, the faster the service gets restored, and they're aware of how many people are affected by it, and they can get the crews out more promptly. Plus, they will also then notify you, typically via text or callback service, to let you know how many hours you have left. Or they will tell you if the service is back on. Say maybe you've gone to a relative's house to ride it out, and you'll get the phone call that the power has been turned back on at your property so you can go home. Let's talk about a few things. Let's move down the page there to unplug and prevent surges. When power goes off, it's often good to unplug your televisions and computers, any large appliance, I should say technical device, not appliances, but tech device that you don't want to be surged when the power comes back on. Now, even though there's a surge protector, you still just unplug it. You've got a lot of money invested in your electronic devices, so just protect them with unplugging your device. Charge your stuff. We often know when bad storms are coming. We hear it on the news. Sometimes we get alerts on our phone. Prepare. Don't be caught up in a scurry because you didn't know it was happening. So charge your stuff ahead of time. Your cell phone, your car, if you have an electric car, your laptop. Make sure that you have devices ready to roll so that if the power goes off, you are prepared to deal with whatever's happening, and you can stay in communication more easily. Also, don't forget to gas up your car when you know a storm is predicted, because this way you can go and charge devices, namely your cell phone, in the car if necessary. And again, if you do decide to charge your devices in the car and you're going to sit in the car for a little while, please make sure the car is not in the garage. The cars need to be out of the garage when running and idle to charge devices. You can have carbon monoxide poisoning, so please make sure the garage door is open or you are at least in the driveway, okay? Safety first. Again, power failures are predicted because of a storm. Do have the medicine that you need for you and your family. Plenty of food and drinks. Do you have what your cat and dog need? Food, meds. And what about your kids? Do you have diapers? Do you have things like that that you just can't run out and get in a storm? So stock up and be prepared. Be a Boy Scout in these moments. Let's talk about the generator safety. This is a big one. There are a lot of people that buy generators and don't fully comprehend how to safely use a generator. And it is important with generators that you keep in mind that this is a high-powered device. It carries a lot of voltage, so that you have to be very mindful. There are people who have suffered life and death situations over a generator. So let's review a few points. 1, do not run a generator indoors or in your garage. If you cannot leave it in the driveway and it has to sit in the garage, make sure that the garage doors, 1 or 2, are fully opened and that that generator is sitting on the very edge. You want to make sure that the exhaust of that generator, which contains carbon monoxide, is pointing outward. Ideally, get it out of the garage. It really should not be in. It should be 1 or 2 feet outside the garage for ideal safety. Only use as directed. This is one of those gadgets that you need to read the instruction manual and the safety manual. Do not backfeed power unless a licensed electrician installed the outlet. What that means is that you have the generator. When the power goes off, you turn the generator on, you gas it up, you pull it, it's chugging along in the driveway. You will plug an extension cord into it. You'll run the extension cord into the house, and maybe you'll plug in the refrigerator because you want to get the refrigerator cooling for an hour. The problem that some people get into is that they will take that extension cord from the generator and they will try to plug it into the outlet. They will try to backfeed power from the generator into an outlet, hoping it can feed power elsewhere in the house. It is extremely dangerous. Extremely. It is a major shock hazard. So, again, you can take the generator, the electrical cord from the generator, and attach it to an appliance. You do not attach it to a wall outlet. Okay? Now, if you have an electrician who has come to your home and has installed a special amp outlet on the outside of your house with a special attachment on your circuit breaker, then you can backfeed the house. This is a special installation. We had it done a year ago. We have not used it yet, fortunately, but our house is fully equipped that we can use the generator to power multiple things throughout the house. But it only can be done after you've had a certified licensed electrician create that setup for you, okay? Safety first. You should keep that generator from getting wet outside. I know we tell you not to keep it in the garage. How do you keep it from getting wet? You could put a sports tent over it if there's a light rain. Typically, when we're in the heat of all the heavy weather, we may not even be out with the generator. We're going to wait until the skies calm a little bit and then we can go out and get that generator running. So be mindful, do not let it get wet. Fridge facts. It's important for our health and safety that we understand what happens to the fridge and its contents when we lose power. So when the fridge goes out, the power goes out, the fridge is off, the freezer is off, I am fanatical about not opening it. I literally take painter's tape and I tape up the handles on the fridge and the freezer so that no one can inadvertently or absent-mindedly open it up. Every time you open that refrigerator, the temperature starts to climb. So here's the deal. According to the USDA, We have 4 hours for a full refrigerator to safely stay intact. That's without opening it. We have 24 hours for a half full freezer and 48 hours for a firmly packed freezer. So you have to be mindful of, if we know a storm is coming, what can you do to protect your food items? Here's a few tips. You want to move your most perishable items, mainly meat and dairy, to the back lower shelves of your refrigerator. That's the area that will stay the coldest the longest. So get the milk off the door and put it on the back shelf. You can put your breads and your condiments and veggies and fruits all along the front and on the doors, because those things don't have to be kept at a certain temperature to be safe. When we know that we're having that weather, get large Ziploc bags or an empty soda bottle. You will fill them 3/4 of the way full, either the bag or the bottle, 3/4 of the way full with water, and you will put it in the freezer. They act as ice packs. Basically, you have taken your freezer and turned it into an igloo cooler, because you're going to pack it with multiple bags or bottles of ice so that it helps keep everything in there frozen longer as the shelves themselves begin to thaw. Love making the homemade ice packs. It's fantastic. And this is really important. Before you eat anything, you have to understand that it may have gone, maybe it's gone 5 or 6 hours. And now the power's come on. And you open the refrigerator. And you start to look at the food contents. Well, you're going to know right away if something has spoiled. It smells funny, it looks funny. Talk about the freezer. If you wait until the items start to refreeze or re-chill, you won't know that it had spoiled. So you need to get to your fridge and freezer promptly when the power comes back on, so you can see what damage has been done. Because if it all refreezes, you're not going to know what's spoiled, and then you risk defrosting, cooking, and eating something that isn't well. So get to it quickly and throw out what you doubt. Fire smart. This is a subject matter that is near and dear to me. Years ago, I was director of nursing in a retirement home, and I was one of 3 staff members that was on an overnight shift. It was 2 security guards and myself as the nursing manager, and we had 500 residents in our retirement facility. And at 5 a.m., an alarm sounded that there was a fire in one of the wings. And myself and the 2 guards ran to the residential wings and started knocking on all the doors, getting all of our residents out, disoriented, 5 a.m. in their jammies and robes, and pushing them down the hall to the main lobby. Well, one guard and I got to the end of a hall, and we opened a steel security fire door. And when we opened that door, the smoke was halfway down. And it was clear to both of us that we were not going to be able to get another 75 feet down that hallway without putting ourselves in harm's way. We knocked on the first 2 doors that were right there by us, and we got those 2 residents out. But the guard grabbed my arm and said, "We need to leave." At that time, I had a 2-year-old son, and I needed to do what I needed to do to protect myself and my child. So we exited the building, and unfortunately, one of our residents at the very end of the hall had made a bad decision. She opened the door to the hallway of the facility instead of going to the balcony. She and her sister lived together. Anne went to the hall, and she perished from the smoke inhalation. Her sister went to the balcony and was rescued. I, being the senior staff member and knowing the residents as I did, I was charged with the duty of identifying her remains and contacting her family. It was a devastating moment that I will never forget. I was sent to the ER and treated for smoke inhalation, and it was one of those earth-shattering moments that makes you question life and its fragility. So I'm pleading with you to be very mindful of your safety smarts. It is important that you have working smoke detectors in your house. You need to check the batteries every 6 months, and you need to make sure that every bedroom, the hallway outside the bedroom, the main floor, and the basement all have smoke detectors. It is important that you replace those smoke detectors every 10 years. Not just the batteries, but the detector itself. They only have a 10-year shelf life. It's important that you own a multi-grade fire extinguisher and that you have an understanding of how to use it. There are great video tutorials on YouTube that you can find that are from firemen directly. I'm not going to even begin to teach you how to use that. Let the pros teach that. Look up some videos from fire departments on how to properly use a fire extinguisher. There are several kinds, some that are for grease fires and some that are for other fires. There are some extinguishers that are multi-purpose. So own a multi-purpose one. I really suggest that you have at least 2 in your house. I think it's good to have one somewhere near the kitchen and one in the basement as well, where there are large utility devices. Practice your escape plan. This is important. Not that you want to frighten your children, but it is important to have a plan with everyone in the family as to where to go, how to get out of the house. And also what's important is, what is a plan for your pet? Our pets are family, and the last thing we want is for a pet to perish in a fire. A neighbor had an electrical fire related to a toaster cord, and their dog passed, and it was devastating for them. So have a plan. Some pros say that the reality of what's happening around them can be very disturbing, so that you should put them in a pillowcase. Take a cat, put him in a pillowcase, and carry him over your shoulder. Yes, that's traumatic, but you don't want them to see and sense even more fear and run. So for a large dog, maybe you put the pillowcase over their head and try to carry them out. Something that will allow you to get them safely out of the space without adding more trauma of them running towards the danger instead of away from. So please be mindful of fire smarts for your family. And my last tip has to do with Anne. And she died of smoke inhalation, not of burns or the fire itself, but from smoke. And the fire experts will tell you that the #1 thing you can do to protect your family is to sleep with your bedroom doors shut. A lot of people don't. A lot of people like having their doors open when they sleep. But smoke will kill you before flames. And if your door is shut, the smoke is less likely to get into your room and therefore gives you a greater chance of survival. So it could be a new learning curve for you and for your family, but I really advise that you consider learning that new habit of everyone sleeping with the bedroom door shut for safety. So from the time our babies came home until now, as college and high school kids, they can't sleep if the door is left open, and neither can I. I have to have the door shut for sense of security. Just peace of mind, because nothing matters more than our lives. The house and all its objects are replaceable, but we are not. Let's talk about vacation mode. How do we protect our home when we're not there? There are a few things that we can do to keep our home safe, protect our family, and avoid big ticket disasters. #1 is to turn the water off. A lot of folks think I'm nuts when I say this, but the first thing I do, the last thing I do before walking out of my house for a vacation is to turn off the water to my entire house. I go to the water main, I turn one valve, and now all the water is shut off. Typically I'll go to the kitchen, which is in the center of the house. I will open the handle and I will let all the water drain so that the water from upstairs comes down and the pipes are basically empty throughout the house. The last thing you want to do is come home to find that you have 3 feet of water in your basement because something broke and the water just continued to flow and flow and flow into your home. Or find your toilet in the living room because the toilet leaked and the water built up and the weight came crashing down. So turn the water off. The only caveat to that is if you have water-powered heat, meaning you have radiators or baseboard heat that is water-fed, okay? You want to make sure you leave the water on in the winter time because you don't want the heat in the house to get below 55. If it's summertime, it doesn't matter, you can turn off the water. But in the winter, you need to leave the water on to the radiators to provide heat. So that would be a situation where you would not turn the whole house off. If you're concerned about potential leaks, you could turn off the valve to the toilets and the washing machine. Those are the biggest objects that you would be concerned about. And the water heater. You can also put it on vacation mode or shut it off, and it will not be cycling water through. Secure your cars. This is important. How many of us have a remote door operator in the car to gain access to our homes? Lock your car at night so people can't access your house when you're sleeping. Unplug heat-producing devices when you travel. It's very important. Toasters, hair dryers, hair straightening tools, curling tools, the iron for clothes, all of those things that can generate heat, toaster ovens, make sure that they're all unplugged before you travel. Security. I don't know about the township that you live in, but in where I am living, you can call the police department before you travel, tell them your dates, tell them your contact number, and they will have an officer check your property while you are gone. We had an officer check our property once and set off our alarm system because he pulled the handle on the back door to check that it was locked, and in doing that, the sensor is very sensitive, and just that little tug on the handle set it off. But at least we knew someone was checking in on our property. Don't be social when you're away. You can often set yourself up for danger because everybody knows where you are. I tend to be bad on that because I like to share, but I often have someone that is staying here with our dog. So the house isn't alone, but we're just not here. Heating and cooling. When you are traveling, you don't want to come home in the wintertime and have frozen pipes. Very important that you do not turn the heat below 55. That's the magic number, 55. Turning it below that sets up for frozen pipes and leaks. So you don't want to have that happen. So 55 will save you money and let everything in your house function at a safe temperature. Leave a light on. Sounds super easy, but use timers. Let people believe that there's some activity going on in the house. Beware of dog. I know it sounds a little silly, but put out a beware of dog sign. If you don't want one of the kind of ugly black and orange industrial looking ones, get a cute beware of dog sign. Leave a dog bowl by the front door. Get a big dog bowl, right? Bruno on it or something like that. It gives the illusion that there is a dog that lives there because it's just less interesting of a home for a bad player when they believe that there's a large dog present. Let's document it. Let's discuss the before and afters of our life involving a disaster at home. When we have things in our home that are of value, we often don't have them documented well, and that can be a problem. So you want to make sure that you have photographs of your valuables, photograph of any major renovations and improvements you've made to your home, and of any of your high-tech devices, because you want to make sure that you have documentation for your insurance company that will get your replacement objects back to the same quality and price point of what you had bought them at. So that's the purpose of insurance. It's to restore your home to its original state. And if you don't have documentation, you can't necessarily compete with them to say, well, you know, I bought a $5,000 TV and not an $800 TV. So keep that in mind. It's good to have record of receipts and maybe UPC box seals, photos of objects. So once you've taken the photos, what do you do with them? Well, I suggest that you scan them perhaps, or you email them to yourself. You start a file, you put them on a hard drive that you leave at a friend or relative's home. We have a relative that travels a lot, and they have left us with a hard drive of all their important documents, so that if anything ever happened to them or to their home, we have their important stuff on a drive at our home, as well as they have copies of theirs. So that's a good idea. But say you got damage, right? You're going to take photos of the damage right away. You're going to save any written estimates that you get, and please get written estimates. Don't just take it, the word, the handshake when you're talking about significant repairs, okay? Get 3 estimates. Okay, I'm not talking about the $200 work, but I'm talking if you're going to have significant work done at your house, get 3 estimates. I usually like to stick with the middle one. The cheapest one, you start to wonder why it's so cheap, and the overpriced one, you're like, is that really legit? So be mindful and a little guarded when you get those estimates and really assess them thoroughly. Working with a property adjuster can be great in that they can often get you a large award or repayment from the insurance company that you may not be able to maneuver yourself because you don't understand the coding and the legal allowances within insurance. But then that adjuster takes a portion of the payment. So maybe on your own, you're going to get the insurance company to give you $5,000 for the repair, but the adjuster is able to work it out for you that you're going to get $9,000, but he's going to take 2 of it. So keep it in mind. It's worth looking into. Sometimes it's really an asset, and sometimes it's not so necessary. But most importantly, I want you to scan those important documents, email them to yourself, store them on that hard drive. What are you going to put on there? Receipts, important documents, policies, warranties, and a list of important contacts. So you may not remember the name of, Mary Wilson, who, was the agent that you signed up for your car insurance. You're not going to remember exactly how to reach her or whatever. Have that list of contacts, email it to yourself, and then if something happens, you'll know where to find the people you need to get some help from. And again, if you have those documents lying around, before you toss them, prevent any, personal identity theft disasters, it's important that you shred anything that has your social security number, your date of birth, your medical information, bank info, and credit card numbers. So here's some basic simple security that you want to add to the list, because obviously wind and water and fire, they're all very devastating, but equally devastating is a break-in or an intrusion. It can be so disturbing to our key sense of security and peace of mind. So few little things you can do to protect yourself. 1, lock your home. I know so many people that just don't lock their home. I don't fully understand that. We lock up every night, but make sure you lock your home when you are in it at night, and also when you are out, so that you don't walk in and find surprises. Securely store a spare key outside in a little hidden spot, or leave one with a trusted neighbor. Leave the light on. Like I said, a well-lit house is less interesting to a burglar or a bad player than a dark house. Post a beware of dog sign. We talked about that before. Fido can always deter trouble. Lock the windows. A lot of folks don't lock their windows, and it's a very easy way for access of your home on the first floor. So when you close a window, lock it. That's my rule. If it's closed, it's locked. This way you don't even have to think twice about it. Security system. There are so many options on the market that are very DIY project oriented that you can install at home. And yes, most of them do have a monthly monitoring fee, but it can be an asset to have that. You want to keep your landscape neat. It's important that your home does not get unkempt, because it's very easy for burglars to hide in unkempt properties around windows and side doors that aren't accessed very well. It's a lot harder when your yard is kept neat and clean and everything's in place, because when something is out of place, you're more alert to it than the yard that is disorganized and a little bit cluttered. Post house numbers. Again, as a former RN, this is really, really important. You want to make sure that the house numbers are very visible, because in an emergency, fire, ambulance, police, you want to make sure that you can be found quickly. And yes, there's GPS out there and it will direct people to your home pretty accurately, but there are those moments or those neighborhoods that are not easy to manage with the GPS. Please make sure that your house is clearly marked and that it's visible during the day and at night. Okay? Reflective numbers, spotlights, whatever it takes, but make sure that you can be found when you need to be found. Again, lock your cars. Valuables can be left in the car. We don't want those to be taken, but more importantly, people can use the car and that remote to access your property. And use a home safe. It's a great option to have a safe. We have a safe in our home. It's a hotel style safe. It's installed very easily, and it gives us peace of mind to know that we have some important things tucked away and it's not just laying around in a file. So again, an easy DIY project. You can get a very nice hotel style safe for about $70. Let's talk. If you have questions, you would like to learn more about other DIY related home management, home repair, and home maintenance classes, please be sure to reach out. You can find me via the Hip Chicks newsletter, and you can sign up for that by going to DIYHipChicks.com. So if you want to follow along on YouTube, be sure that you go to YouTube and subscribe. You can like us on Facebook and you can follow on Instagram. And when you go to any of those social media platforms, you will find us at DIY Hip Chicks. That is our username on all of our platforms. So thanks again. I hope that the Home Emergencies 101 was helpful and that you can take some measures to keep your property and your people a little bit safer. Thanks again.